A young lady came into the office today, and she sat over there, and she went through a policy. She just has a policy she's going to deliver, and she wants to make sure she understood every single line of that policy. She was doing her research. She had a couple questions. She came to me and said, okay, what's this mean? How do I interpret this? How do I do that? That's what we want everybody to do. Again, this is your business. And our role and responsibility is not to tell you everything. I wish we could. But your role and responsibility is to research things. If you can't find that information out, and then you ask. And that's what you did, correct? I bring that up because I'm going to start with two paragraphs that I read, and I'm going to read them to you about objections. And we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to get into some live objections. Is everybody fair with that? Yeah. So, are you sure? I'm going to read this to you and tell me what you think afterwards. Handling objections seems to be one of the toughest parts of the sales process. But by anticipating and being prepared for them, you can help a great deal. In fact, there are only a handful of objections which customers regularly employ. So by learning them about them, one can learn how to handle them. Objections are actually beneficial in the course of selling because they provide opportunity for the sales process to overcome customer reservations by clarifying their needs and explaining the benefits of the product. Almost all objections open a greater possibility for understanding, and they're a perfect opportunity for you to transfer your enthusiasm and get your message across to the prospect. So you will realize that objections are nothing more than questions in disguise. Objections sometimes are a signal that the sale is progressing and you're getting closer to a positive response. When a prospect voices an objection, they may be simply asking for more information about your product, and their objection tells you what area that you need more information. Objections refer to any hindrance voiced by the prospect which prevents you from moving to the next step in your presentation or closing the sale. The key word is voiced. Usually a lack of understanding on the part of the prospect is the reason for the objection. Luckily, objections have a structure which can enable you to analyze them, determine the cause, minimize their occurrence, and deal with the effects that arise. It is important to work with the prospect to understand the exact character and extent of these objections. Using a client-centered approach where you provide all the facts necessary will work well in overcoming the objections. When you welcome objections, you're communicating to the prospect that his or her needs are important and you'll be addressing them. Honesty will take you a far way in handling objections. Don't tell the prospect what you think they want to hear. Today's prospects are far better prepared and more practical than in the past. If you listen to the prospects and acknowledge his or her objections as being valid, you'll be offering additional justification for the prospect to buy in your product or service. So anybody have a comment about that? Thoughts? Yes.
In a way, it's good. If people are asking, they have any objection, it means they are interested to know more. And the person who's interested will only have more questions for you.
Oftentimes, you're right, Sumit. Objections are a sales opportunity. They just are asking you for more information.
More information, more interactions.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say something? So just so you know, this comes out of my sales book, page 224. I wrote that. So if you want to learn more, you pick up a book. Doesn't have to be mine, but you pick up a book and you learn. And that's what Gurpreet did. Now, I want to focus on the industry, the life insurance industry, the wealth industry. So as everybody knows, I've been doing this a long time, and it's come down, we've analyzed it. There's only 4 objections in this industry. The first objection is no need. They don't need our product. There are certain clients that don't need our product. We've run into clients that, well, you'll look at them, you'll do the analysis, and they have way too much insurance. They don't need our product. They may need other products from us. But again, as we said, if you do things honestly and say to the client, you know what, you don't need this insurance, you need something else, that goes a long way. So one of the objections you may get is no need. Second objection that you get is no money. This seldom happens in our industry. You've come to the bottom line and literally they have no money. Now, it usually is an excuse. And we talk a lot about excuses in our industry. This usually is an excuse because they'll say, you know, I have no money or I can't afford it or whatever happens to be. Yet they go to Tim Hortons 5 times a day. They do this, they do that. They are other reasons that they're spending their money. And it's interesting when we talk about competition. Competition in our industry isn't the other brokers out there. The competition in our industry is the food, the car payments, the mortgage payments, all that other stuff is really what our major competition is. So if you keep that in mind, when you look at it, we always talk about at the Business Builder Opportunity, how many people don't have insurance. So when you run into somebody and they do have a broker, there's a great opportunity there. But you know what? Very seldom you will. So don't worry about it. But coming back to objections, no need, no money. Third is no rush. You know what? I ain't gonna live another 30 years. I don't need insurance today. That's really, if we come into that situation, it's our role and responsibility to explain to them, you know, there comes a point in time in every single person's life that they will not qualify for life insurance. There comes a point in time in every person's life that they will not qualify for life insurance. That's what our job is. We need to make sure that if they need insurance, to get it as soon as possible. As we all know, the younger somebody gets it, the cheaper it is as well. So that's the third. But here is the number one objection we get. And it's usually hidden in a lot of other areas. And it accounts for what the analysts say about 88% of all the objections. And that's no trust or confidence, either in you or the underlying company. And we heard that. We were on a call today from IA. And one of the things they were saying was, you know what? A lot of people have never heard of us before. They don't trust us because we haven't been around as long as other companies. We have to be able to overcome that. We have to be able to say, hey, you know what? Let me tell you a little bit about IA. Let me tell you how long they've been along, how big they are, how much they're growing, how much assets under management they have. That's part of our job. But the most important thing we have to understand and recognize, and this is the hardest for us in any sales profession, is they say, I don't trust you. They're never going to say that. They won't say, you know, I don't trust you. They're going to say, you know what? I don't know if I can afford it. And you have to undercover it. Really? You can't afford it. Okay, let us talk about that. And that's how we handle objections. You know what? Can't we do this sometime next year? I'm really busy right now. Well, is that true? Because I'll give you an example. There was a gentleman that I started my career with. He was hired about 6 months after me, and he was a former banker. And he looked like the guy that you could trust, but he didn't understand how to read people. And after about 5 years, he'd made very little sales. And what he had, though, he had a database of thousands of people. He used to call them up and say, hey, you know what, Ram, I talked to you 6 months ago. Are you ready for us to sit down? No, I'm not busy. Do you mind if I call you again another 6 months? Yeah, okay. And he had all this file, just calling people, calling people, calling people, calling people. There was no rush. They didn't trust him. Once they met him, he was a great guy and they would trust him and he'd make sales. But it all comes down to you. Do they trust you? And that is the number one objection that you, through here, need to overcome. We can give you all the tools, tell you why Beneva is better in this product, why an IPP is better than this. But if they ever say to you, you know what, I don't trust you, then you're done. So that comes back to the IPP. One of the things that we are going to be doing is they suggested is where they get a lot of their objections are through what we call other center of influences. The number one with the IPP happens to be accountants. I got to run this by my accountant. Really? Does your accountant really understand IPPs? No. So we are hopefully, with my friend back there, we're going to have a session, one of our sessions. We'll invite accountants here. And once they understand the IPP, hopefully we'll get a lot of business off of that. This is what we want to hear from members of the team is how can we increase our sales? And that is one objective we are going after. So what I would like to do now, no need, no money, no rush, no confidence. If anybody has any objection that they want to talk about, I'm willing to speak about. By the way, the only objection that I've ever had that I have never been able to overcome is my faith doesn't allow me to